Hello, sir.
Hello, Joey.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you. I want one of those t-shirts.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. We'll make more and send to you. Thank you. One of the things that's so the first time I ever came across your existence or knowledge of your existence was when I was signed at Universal. So I worked there for 2 years, and you were always in the shadows. People would point, oh, that's the guy that owns the place. That's the guy that owns the place. And it was very interesting to just see you on as human, just walking up and down. Is that something you get often?
Some people say it. Other people say not so much, right? So you see me with my friends or when I'm playing sports and stuff. I'm right there on the front line, right? But you know, in sort of everyday life and business, you're probably better off being in the background and just making the work count.
The Nigerian way is to put up a lot more airs than you do.
Well, maybe different strokes for different folks. I think it's important in life to make sure that what you do counts, not who you are.
True.
And I think that counts a lot more than who you are. Yeah, it's more sustainable because one day we'll all leave, right? But whatever you do stays.
But in a country like this, where a lot of our life is anchored on identities, I am this, I am that, I am this, rather than I have done this, I have done this, I have done that. How do you square that off in a place like this?
No, it's a good point. It's a pity, but the problem with places like this is the louder people get the most attention.
True.
But I don't think the majority is I am this, I am that, right? I think it's just the louder. It's just that we have this system in Nigeria where the more you speak and the louder you are, the more you're heard and the more you're paid attention to. So, those things will change. And, in the boardrooms, in the classrooms, in the bedrooms, they're not there, right? They're only on TV.
True. But your first brush with Nigerianism, what it means, of course, you grew up in a Nigerian household, diplomats.
Yeah.
London has been the UK has been your place. But then you came back here to school in UI.
No.
Or UNN.
UNN, but I came back for secondary school, by the way.
Oh,
I came back to Federal Government College, Lagos.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, at the age of 10. My first visit to Nigeria, I was shipped out to Federal Government College, Lagos in Ijanike.
Why did they ship you out?
My father was a diplomat. He says, you need to be Nigerian. And, just being born and growing up in London, I didn't really identify myself as anything. I just thought I was a different color from all of my friends.
Yeah.
I think my father just wanted us to be a bit Nigerian. So my brother and I were shipped out very early on to Ijanike. Spent 5 great years there. Well, let's say 4.5 great years. The first half of it was adjustment.
I was about to ask about the first one because that's a transitionary period.
It's crazy stuff, by the way.
How was it?
Well, it was fun. As you can imagine, as a kid, when you're 10, my brother was 11.
Yeah.
When you're that age, you want to explore. And, we lived in a fairly sheltered, tight life, right? My mom was pretty tough. And my dad, although he wasn't around that much, but he was tough when he was around. So we grew up in a very strong family. Dinner was at a certain time, breakfast was at a certain time. We had rules and regulations at home. We had things on the fridge to do. So,
you guys were very structured.
Yeah, almost too structured, right? Because my friends were not as structured, and they seemed happy. And when I grew up and I had my own kids, and I thought to myself, I didn't want my kids to think of me the way I thought of my parents did, right?
Yeah.
I just thought they were too structured, too anti-fun. But you do those things for a reason. And if my parents hadn't handled us the way they handled us then, I don't think you and I would be sitting down here today.
Right. You never know.
You never know. You never know. We're going to be sitting somewhere else. Making more noise.
But now, what are the leeways now that you're raising your kids? What are the leeways you've given to them that you didn't have during your time?
Yeah, so it's a different world now, right?
Yes, it is.
And kids have different exposures. So then I felt my parents were very tight on structure.
Yeah.
What time you woke up, what time you brushed your teeth, what time you arrived at dinner, what you say when you're going out and when you're coming back, school, you know, you had to bring your report cards, you know, go through stuff. Homework was sacrosanct.
Yeah.
So I think in these times, it's less about that, and it's now more about your kids, their friends, the way they see life, you know, and they're brought up in a probably a more, let me not say luxury setting. You're just brought up with more freedoms, right? You know, I was brought up from the school of hard knocks. My parents were civil servants. They didn't really have money. We didn't have any sort of. We had essential commodities, right? Shall I put it that way? We didn't have luxuries. These days, these kids have luxuries, right? You know, so I think, you know, my philosophy was just to make sure my kids knew how to interact with other people, make sure they're streetwise, made sure they were alert, made sure they kept good friends, and made sure they made the right decisions on balance. You know, let them make their own mistakes and make the right decisions. The great thing is my wife and I are very different. You know, I'm laissez-faire.
But she's a doctor.
She's a doctor, but she's very controlling. She wants, you know, to do things in a certain way. And that helped, I think. You know, she spent obviously a lot more time with the kids. But I mean, I think it helped the kids to develop because they saw two different ways of
existence.
Of bringing the kids up. Yeah.
But then being streetwise. You're corporate.
Yeah, well, I'm streetwise, by the way.
Of course, you have to be streetwise to build anything in this country. Why is being, especially in a country like Nigeria, why is being streetwise such an important attribute, not just in business but in life?
So you know they say, and I don't know who I'm quoting here, but they basically say it's not the most intelligent that survive. It's not the strongest of species in the jungle that survive. It's those species that are able to adapt to change, right? And that's what streetwiseness is all about. It's the ability to be on the street and understand what is required and what is not required. You know, I don't think if you're the most intelligent or the strongest or the fastest, you know, or the richest, you can survive long term, right? I think Nigeria will happen to you. And it will happen to you a number of times. It's just your ability to maneuver that that creates that ability to fight for another day.
So I'm correct to say your definition of streetwise is adaptability.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. It's adaptability, it's resilience. You know, it's...
Why do you need resilience?
Sorry?
Why do you need resilience?
In Nigeria?
Yeah.
Because, you know, you face all sorts of challenges and, you know, you can focus on the pain or you can focus on the gain, right? And Nigeria is a series of ups and downs. You're not going to always have it good and you're not going to always have it bad. And you got to choose your moments. You got to recognize you're in the good time and exploit it and use that opportunity. And you got to also recognize you're in the bad time and realize that it's a phase, right? And you're going to pass through it. So you build yourself to just walk through it. Resilience is that ability to move from good to bad, good to bad, good to bad in cycles and remain unaffected, right? You keep your strategy, keep your head on your shoulders and do the right things or whatever you think is right. And that's what resilience is. Adaptability is the machine that carries you from the place to place, right? So I think those two things are essentially ingredients. When people ask me, should I come to Nigeria to do business? Should I relocate to Nigeria? Should I come to school in Nigeria? I say, you know, you got to ask yourself, do you have a tough skin? Are you really resilient? Are you adaptable? And do you have passion for what you're coming to do? Because, you know, without commitment here, you won't survive it.
True. So we talk a lot about resilience in this place, in a country like this. And on its own, it appears to be a great quality to have. But it's a quality that's born out of a lot of pain and turbulence and all of that. Would you rather have not had that in business? Or you could have avoided that by not doing business here. You have corporate experience in London. Yeah. In the UK.
In UK, Europe, America.
So you have all of that, very structured, all of it. And then when you wanted to strike out on your own, you came back home. How was that feeling?
I mean, it was
when you were starting, the first time you said, okay, I'm going back to Nigeria. How was that feeling?
It was great, but it didn't. It's a transition. It doesn't happen exactly like that. I didn't wake up in the morning and say I'm going back to Nigeria.
How did it happen?
So there are a number of things. I mean, obviously, I started a business in Europe or in the UK, and then moved into Europe and moved into America. There are a number of things that happened in America, and I thought, you know what, I'm done with the West. I want to be in Africa, right? And obviously, Nigeria is my country in Africa, so I had to choose 4 countries in Africa. So I chose Nigeria, basically Lagos for the west of Africa, Joburg for the south. We were just talking off camera about Joburg, Nairobi for the east, and Cairo in the north. And then rolled out my business in these places. It was 10 years ago, almost to the day, by the way, that we sold our Africa business and focused on Nigeria and Lagos, right? Now, so the feeling at the time was one of, I need to be somewhere where I count. I need to be somewhere where what I do makes a difference. I want to influence market trends. I want to influence customer preferences. I want to make ordinary people do extraordinary things. To make that count, you need to be in a place where you're not a number. You're not just a statistic. You're actually a person. And people look at what you're doing as opposed to who you are or what color you are or what your name is. So, having worked all my life in Europe and America, it was time for change. And going back to your assertion on resilience and steadiness, those of us who've worked abroad, we know that you have a whole host of problems. You have a basket of problems and opportunities abroad. It's just that they're very different kinds of problems and different types of opportunities. You come to a place like Nigeria, you flick a light switch, it may go on, it may not, right? You turn a tap, water may come out, it may not. And when the water comes out, it could be white, it could be brown, right? There you don't have those issues, but you have a set of other issues that are almost as difficult to navigate.
You have identity issues.
You have identity issues. You have, someone comes to a place and the things that are given to you are not always by choice, right?
True.
And the friends you make and the places you go to are not always by choice. You're just in a different world, right? I'm not saying those things are good or bad, right? They are what they are, right? And you have to work twice as hard. You have to be better than the best.
True.
So whether you're in sports or you're in education or you're in music or whatever it is you're doing, you've got to be better than the people that don't look like you. And that counts for something, right? And so when you come to Nigeria, and if there's one thing that I love about Nigeria, is technically we're all the same.
Yeah.
I know, recently there've been all sorts of things about tribal things and religious things,
and even class
things. But I think these things they must go away. There's nothing that destroys a country more than that, right? And they really must go away because we're all the same, right? And most of us who lived abroad and came back here for that reason. We didn't come back here to have new differences, right? So in my life, I faced many challenges, right? Everywhere I've been. They're just different challenges. And the challenges I faced in Nigeria are different challenges. And because Nigeria is a smaller country, when I say smaller, is there are fewer people to listen to here, right?
True.
And, you get what you ask for, right? I came here to make sure what I did stood out, right? And let's assume I achieved that. It's the reason why, and when something good happens, people know. And when something bad happens, people know, right? So you got to roll with those punches. It's the life you asked for. But it doesn't mean you didn't have those punches when you were elsewhere. It's just that they were not as publicly played out.
True.
Yeah.
Let me sit with that. Let me sit with that. Because you're very precise in how you think. I can get that from your answers. Yeah, so that's good. But then selling African businesses to focus on Nigeria. You came into Africa to build something, and you chose all the different parts of the continent. You anchored yourself along those parts in those countries. Why not just go for one? Why did you go big at that level? 4 countries at once.
Diversity. I wanted an Africa business, not necessarily a Nigeria business. I wanted to understand, culture, currencies, legislation. These countries are all very different, even though it's called Africa. When you grew up abroad, do you think of Africa as a country? People call Africa as if it's a country. You come here, you realize it's it's a collection of different countries and different cycles of evolution, right? It's just, they're so different and they're exciting in different ways and painful in other ways, right? So I wanted that experience, as a young man, I was about experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how do the dynamics differ from Cairo to Lagos and Accra? What do you call it? Joburg and Nairobi. How do the dynamics play out?
Incredibly different. The people are so different for a start. So different. Obviously, the normal things: language, culture, industry, infrastructure. All these countries all had different cycles. The political system, the legal system, the tax system. Everything was so different. The only thing that was more or less common, especially between sort of Nigeria and Kenya, is that most of the people were black. But, in Kenya, there are white Kenyans, brown Kenyans. Yeah. South Africa obviously has its own color issues. In Cairo, everybody's more or less the same color. When you're not that color, you're a foreigner. In Nigeria, almost everybody's the same color. When you're not that color, you're more or less a foreigner. So I mean, these countries were all different. But one thing they had in common is they were Africa. And, I know they talk about the Maghreb and the north of Africa. And North Africa is Africa when it counts. But they don't want to be in Africa when it doesn't count, right?
They were actually the original people named Africa by the Romans.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, you know your history.
Yeah. I'm a buff.
Yeah. And they want to be African when it counts, but when it doesn't count, they tend to say they're Arab.
Yeah.
The South Africans, they've got Africa in their name, right? They too want to be Africa, but they want to sort of be different as well. And Kenya, Nigeria, is sort of the middle of Africa is what we traditionally call Black Africa, right?
Sure.
So we're the cornerstone of Africa, but between Kenya and Nigeria, excludes the Maghreb and South Africa, I think it's 95% of the GDP of the continent and the population as well,
sure.
Right? So I think they all have challenges because these are countries, take Egypt out of it, but between South Africa, Kenya and Nigeria, that is 80% of the GDP.
Sure.
And a huge part of the landmass as well of Black Africa.
Sure.
But they compete.
Yeah.
They compete
aggressively.
With each other. Yes, very aggressively.
Both in the tangibles and the intangibles.
Yeah. More the intangibles than the intangibles. And we were talking, I was in Joburg. So I used to go to Joburg every month. I had an office in Joburg. I was there for a week. I actually had an apartment there. I more or less thought I lived there, right?
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it, but it had its own specifics. But, people used to just walk up to me and say, "What's your problem?"
Were you doing anything? You're just chilling.
Yeah, I say, "Bro, I'm just hanging in there," right? So that wouldn't happen to you in Nigeria, right? So they do have different nuances. But you do find countries that are very similar in Africa, or cities, let's say, not say countries, because, if I think of Lagos and Enugu, they're very different.
Yeah.
Yes, they're in the same country. But when I look at Lagos, and I think when I moved around Africa, and, we had offices in 17 different cities in Africa. Whoa. So the beginning was those 4 countries.
A ton.
But we filled in. So Kinshasa is the closest thing to... You've been to Kinshasa?
No, not yet.
Oh gosh, you just need to go.
I've read so much about it.
It is the closest thing to Lagos you could ever find.
Why?
I mean, just, your first impression when you come into a city like Lagos is it's noisy, it's chaotic, it's aggressive, but it's entertaining and bright.
It's electric.
It's electric, right? That's the same impression you get into Kinshasa. You spend a day, just 24 hours, then you realize that the chaos is organized. It's actually not chaos. It only looks like chaos from the outside.
It's just entropy.
Yeah, it's there's just so much going on at the same time. If abroad, the closest thing to it is New York, right? You get into New York, if you don't know the place, you're afraid.
Sure.
There's just so much difference on the streets. Yeah, so that's how Lagos is. It's just such a dynamic place, and Kinshasa is exactly the same. And these are cities that I would say with the right pressure, with the right governance, with the right will, they'll probably be in the top 5 best cities in the world.
Yeah.
Right? They've just got so much going for them. Most of the people in these cities don't realize that. Right?
Because you're in it.
Yeah.
It's hard to zoom out when mundanity just occupies you.
Yeah, you're in it. It has everything. It has the numbers as well, right? So those days in Africa, we're going to open up a new office, looking for a new market. And the first thing you do, you look at the numbers. You say, well, how many people are here? What's the income per capita? Where do they stay? What's the landmass? And you think, you know what? I can go to a little district in Lagos, and there are more people in that district than this entire country. I mean, what am I doing here? Right? So it's, you know, I sold this entire business. I'm focused on Nigeria, Lagos to be exact, right? Landmark to be exact. That's 10 hectares, right?
Yeah.
On the basis that you actually didn't need to be anywhere. Right? You know, I often tell people, so I grew up, people saying, you know, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that was the whole idea of being in different places, diversity, right? But I then realized the thing my mom used to say when I was very young.
Yeah.
She said, put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket carefully, right? And that's basically...
The pigeon version of that is... Peace for one place, make it foam.
Yeah. You got it.
Yeah. So she was saying that.
Yeah. So, and I realized that, you know, it was such a good business philosophy. Mm-hmm. You know, you're in a country, in a place where people feel that diversity matters. Yeah. You're in a place that people feel that they should have different businesses and different things. Maybe the best thing to do is just focus on one thing and just do it well. Mm-hmm. You know what they say, do it in a way nobody else can.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
What are the three things I learned? We had this funny lecturer in business school, and he came in and he said 3 things. He says, who wants to be rich? And, you know, obviously everybody raises their hands up. You know, maybe 1 or 2 people say, no, I don't want to be rich, right? Yeah. Right? And he says, here's the formula. 3 things. He says, 1, think of a good idea. Okay. He said 2, execute it in a way nobody else can. 3, buy a big bag because you need it to collect all your money, right? And you know, that philosophy, that's been sort of stayed with me. I mean, obviously not in its plainest form, but it just basically means is think of an idea that solves the problems of many people, right? Then execute that idea in a way that, you know, you said, you know, you can tell yourself that you ran your best race, right? You left no stone unturned. Mm-hmm. You have no regrets, no reserve, no retreat, right?
You go all out.
Yeah, you're all out, right? Just leave it out there. Don't go to bed thinking I could have done more, right? And you do that. And then next thing, you wait for success. Because you know what? Excellence, hard work, integrity is a currency in this country. Not only is it a currency, there's very little competition and there's so much opportunity. Right, but you got to stay with it. You can't do it when you feel like or when it's convenient, right? If you say integrity, you need to be tested and you need to stay with it. Excellence, the same thing. It's very easy to say, okay, you know what? Let's just manage. You know what we say here? Okay, I'll manage now.
Yes.
It's okay, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
meh.
Yeah,
good enough.
yeah. You know, so I think, you know, that's those 3 principles of, you know, hard work, excellence, and integrity. If you focus on them and just stay at it, you know, you'll be undeniably successful. It's impossible not to be successful, especially in a country like this that has so many challenges and so many opportunities. Now, those 3 things you can take to Europe. You can go to London or New York or Tokyo. You can go to the world's most developed cities. You can have all of them. But you know what? Every corner you turn, everybody has the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? So the opportunities are different. So suddenly it really matters the color of your skin or who you are, what school you went to. And, you know, those things actually do matter and play a big part in your life. But here, those things don't play a part. What school you went to, so what? You know, you're either street smart, naturally intelligent, you know, emotionally intelligent, hardworking, and you're ready to go, right? You're resilient. And that's what matters. So it's what you package with that I think makes a difference.
Well, isn't that the harder path in a country like this, in a country where, so it's great to have integrity, even as a person beyond business. As a person, it's great to have integrity, to strive for excellence, to hold on to certain tenets or values that you like, that form your belief system. Just even when you want to be moral, whatever, but your own belief system that carries you through. But in a place like this, where normalcy is the opposite of these, survival has degraded our humanity to the point where we're just too desperate to allow these values grow or to hold on to these things. And then you show up with all of these and you're trying to force your light into a system that's filled with darkness. How do you then navigate that? Or how have you navigated that in a country like this?
Yeah, you know,
what did you have to give? What's the toll for doing that? Because it comes at a cost, you know?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's sanity, sometimes it's time, sometimes it's family, sometimes it's friends. But, I think the reality is whatever you do and wherever you do it, there are all sorts of, you have to navigate all sorts of challenges, right? And the challenges just present themselves in different ways. I would say, first and foremost, be a good person, right? Whatever good means to you. I'm not talking religiously. Listen, be a good person.
What does good mean to you?
Treat people the way I want people to treat me.
Okay.
Yeah, just be realistic all the time. So literally as simple as that. And then it gives you the chance to play in the game, right? Now, if you're playing in the game, what are the other attributes that I think have helped me along the way survive? This is a journey. So I'm not going to claim success by any stretch of the imagination, right? Neither am I going to claim failure, right? We're in that course and we're here to stay. We're built to last. What was it one of my friends said to me after some major issues? He said, this blast will last. I liked it. I wrote it down.
This blast will last.
This blast will last, yeah. So I have these sort of tools I talk about, and I grew up with those tools. So one of them is have ambitious friends. So have friends that think like you, that want the things you do. If all your friends are drunks, you're going to end up being a drunk, right? If your friends are sportsmen, you're more likely than not going to end up. If your friends are businessmen, you're going to be, but have friends that pursue the same sort of things you pursue, right? And let there be a measure of seriousness and a measure of play, right? They used to say again, my mom used to say, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are, right? So I think your friendship base is very important, and friends are not acquaintances. They're
life partners.
They're life partners. They're people you call when it matters, right? It's not a convenience, right? It's always inconvenient when you call a friend. And it's inconvenient for that friend, but I'm calling you.
It's what it is. You have to be a villager. You're part of it.
I know, I'm going to finish my tools, but there's a quick story I want to tell you.
Okay.
So when I came back to Nigeria, after work and stuff, came back to start this new landmark thing here in Africa. And I was in Lagos one day, and I barely knew the place. I was frightened to death, still trying to feel safe, right? And I'm sleeping 2 a.m. in the morning. My phone rings. Right? And it's one of my friends. He calls me, good friend of mine. I went to secondary school with him, right? It was one of the guys I met then. And he calls me and he says that he's stranded on Third Mainland Bridge or something. And then people are disturbing him. Can I come out? I said, well, why call me? I don't know anywhere. I don't even know how to drive in this place, right? And he said I'm the only person that he knows 2 things. One is that my phone will be on at this time.
Okay.
And 2, I will come out, right? So, it was literally blackmail. I just come out. If he's listening to this, he'll recognize himself.
That speaks a lot about you and how much of a dependable person you are.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. And his car had broken down and he was being surrounded by all sorts of guys and he was literally, he wasn't panicking or anything, right? He was fairly comfortable, but if I was in that situation, I would be panicking, right? But anyway, that's a story for another day. So friends, have ambitious friends, have friends like you. The second thing is network relentlessly, right? They say your network is your net worth. So, be in a position where you speak to people that you don't know. Right? I call it the strength of weak ties.
Yeah.
Right? And
the strength of what?
Weak ties.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
The strength of weak ties. And that's people you basically meet by chance. There's actually some research somewhere that basically says, and I think it was the guy who started LinkedIn. What's his name? Gosh, I'll remember it. Yeah. But and it basically says 73%, they define success, what success actually means in life, right? And 73% of successful people in the world made their success via the strength of weak ties, people they met by chance.
Yep.
So people you meet in a restaurant, in a hotel lobby, at a conference, not family, not friends, not classmates. Strangers, basically. Strangers who you've met and you've had a 15-minute conversation with, right? Those people are likely to help you a lot more than blood.
I agree.
In your career,
I
right?
agree.
Don't call them when you're on the Third Mainland Bridge at 2 a.m. They're not going to come, right?
But those are ties those are serendipitous ties.
Yes. Right. So absolutely, you walk into a room, you're bidding for a contract, you face a guy who has your destiny in his hands, and he met you and had a pleasant experience with you 4 years ago, in some conference, and you just talked and you drank some coffee and you left each other, right? You're more likely than not to get that contract.
True.
right? So the strength of weak ties is huge. And in my life, I am hand in the air. I'm a beneficiary over and over again of the strength of weak ties. I take very seriously people I meet by chance.
But that's a lot of people. So that's the same in my life. I could say that's the same. I even get, I think my lady is over there, Neka, my manager also. And sometimes she gives me flack for being a golden retriever of sorts.
I get it. I get it.
I mean, a golden retriever. So in my work, I magnate people. And you go into a place, apart from the people that know you, I'm just curious. I want to know people. I want to, not for anything, just to know them because I'm curious. And then you meet them, you guys have a good time. And then 5 years later, 10 years later, she's shocked when she's like, oh, we need to do this. And I'm like, oh, let me call him. And she's like, but you've never, I've known you for this while. You never, I'm like, but I know them. We're cool. Like how? We went drinking the other night. And then we just connected. And like, have you spoken to them? No, but we're buddies.
No, I get it. I get, absolutely, I get it. In business, I mean, I don't have time, you probably don't have time for me to tell some of the stories, but I tell you something that I would say 80% of what, of the little I've achieved so far has come literally directly from weak ties, people I met by chance. So I'm a big believer in it. I think it's huge. If there's one talent you need to have, it is how to leave people with a memory, right? So just treat people well. When you meet people by chance, treat them well and leave them with a good memory. There's absolutely no gain in being nasty.
True.
You think there is. You think, oh gosh, I'm not in a good mood today. Control yourself. That ability to control your mood and how you interact with people is huge. But people don't realize that people are very short-tempered, and when they're in the zone of unhappiness, they spread it. But that thing will cost you. It will eventually cost you. So I learned the hard way. I thought, control your emotions, control who you are, no matter what's going on, good, bad, or ugly. Try to be nice to people and try to leave them with a good impression. You will cash that check later.
True. Right? And how about the people who have like self-imposed barriers? Like maybe there's anxiety upstairs, there's social anxiety, all of that. How about that? What's the fate of those people?
No, I know, but we all do. We all have our insecurities and our anxieties. Your ability to overcome those things are huge, right? And you don't have to overcome it and be a different person. You have to overcome it for a moment, right? And that's the strength in you. You've got to always try to be better today than you were yesterday.
True.
Right? And if you focus and practice on being better today than you were yesterday, you'll find that tomorrow will always be better. I'm going to actually tell you a very quick story.
Yeah, listen. Tell me the stories. We have time. Tell me the story. Hit me with it.
So there's this little girl, right? And she comes into this new school, and she's been watching athletics, and she wants to be an athlete. She wants to be a 100-meter runner. But, the only one problem, she couldn't really run. She wasn't fast. And then she walks up to the school sports teacher, and she says, look, I want to join the athletics team, and I want to run 100 meters for the school. And it says, okay, let's test you. And he tests her, and she can't really run. But he says, he's going to make her a project, right? Because she had zeal. You know what they say, without passion, you'll never start. Without consistency, you'll never finish. So she had passion and she had consistency, right? So he said, he's going to try. So the first race she runs, she comes last, she does 20 seconds, 100 meters, next race, and so on, right? And then, a few months down the road, she's trying, she races, there are 8 of them, she comes last again, but she does 17.9 seconds. And he says, you know what, it's time to celebrate. This is your personal best, your own personal world record. That what you need to do is you need to make sure that every time you run, you have your personal best. So she starts doing that, right? And every time it's better than 17.9 seconds. So from 8th, she gets to 7th, 6th, 5th. One day, you're thinking to yourself, well, surely now coming first must count. But that's not what really counts. What really counts is making sure. What matters more to her is beating her personal best.
Yeah, incremental personal success.
Absolutely. And eventually you'll come first. And that's basically what happens. And by the way, this is a true story. Yeah, this is a true story. So that's the philosophy: is be better today than you were yesterday, and tomorrow will be better than today, right? So if you have anxieties, if you have any inhibitions, if you have any insecurities, we all do. We don't always show them, right? And we're not out there saying these are my insecurities. These are, so like people, I probably speak a lot in public, and I do quite. But I remember reading something Obama was talking about. And, if you count 5 public speakers, right, Obama is going to be in your top 5 for anybody, right, that knows him at least, right? And I heard him saying he goes to the toilet, he throws up before his public speech. He said he was as nervous as hell. He practiced deep breathing exercise. You think, if this man could do that, right, who am I to say, I've got my toes jingling, right? So you have to overcome these things, right? And it doesn't really matter what you put into yourself to overcome it. What matters is how you show it. So this is an appeal to people out there. We all have the insecurities. We all have anxieties. We all have deficiencies, right? Because we're human.
Yeah.
The minute a robot is created, it doesn't have those things, but we're human, right? Those things are not there for the world to see, but the world knows that they're there. So don't worry about it. Manage it, understand it, control it, and act on it.
Are these all your tools?
No, so I've got 2 more.
Okay.
The third one is increase your surface area for luck, right? So this defies the notion that luck is by chance.
No, it's not.
Yeah, luck is not by chance.
Never.
How do you work? The luckier you get, right? It's as simple as that.
I've lived a long, at least it's still small, but I've lived a long enough life and I've had enough experiences to know that luck does not just happen.
Well, you tell that to a 25-year-old and they think, honestly, that you're just talking, right? The kids of these days they think luck is by chance. They just think you're lucky, right? And they want to be lucky. And the way to be lucky is to get things that other people don't get, right? Luck is not by chance. You create your surface area for luck. And I give raw examples like, can you imagine an orange seller?
Yeah.
Right? And this guy is selling oranges at the back of a car park, right? Where there's really nobody passing by. Another person is selling oranges on the main road. They're both selling the same thing at the same price in the same area. One makes money, the other doesn't, right? The one in the car park was not as wise as the one on the road where there was traffic. So the one on the road increased his surface area for luck, right? That is the notion that, luck is not by chance. You make your own luck.
Yeah.
So so I say to people, go out there and make yourself lucky. Right? Don't look at other people and say, oh, they were lucky. I didn't know him. I didn't know him. I'm sure most successful people in the world didn't necessarily didn't have a golden spoon in their mouth, didn't go to school. There's just so many instances where people are self-made, right? And if them, why not you, right? And then the last tool is a common one. They say, if you can't count it, it doesn't count. So in my life, I count everything. Right? Do you play table tennis?
I do.
Yeah? So imagine when you're batting around with friends and you're just, you haven't started, you're trying all sorts of swings and stuff, right?
It doesn't matter.
The minute you say zeros, right?
Everybody locks in. Everybody locks in.
And gets going. So, and that's it, because you start counting, right? And I tell my team in the office, if you can't count it, it literally doesn't count. So whatever you're doing that matters, count. Right? If you count the number of times you go to the gym, it means it matters to you. Yeah. If you count how much money you have in the bank, it means it actually matters, right? If you count, basic things like the number of times you read a book, right? Then it counts, right? So I keep that. So I count everything. Yeah. So those are my tools.
Okay. Let's speak a bit about luck. So in your existence, you come from a family that had a leg up.
You think so?
Diplomat.
No.
It's civil service. It's civil. No, I'm not saying that's what cost you. I'm trying to land the point.
They say, what do they call it? Nepo and Lapo.
See it here, Nepo baby.
I'm not. Look, I concede my children are Nepo babies. Right?
But you weren't Nepo.
I certainly not. I've had this conversation with my team in office.
Okay.
Certainly not. No.
Even though you attended Eton?
So what?
That's a leg up.
No, it's not a leg up.
It's a hand up then.
I took an exam that had 2,000 people in it and 26 people were taken and I passed the exam. It's not a hand up. I created my own luck. Okay. I mean, nobody flew me into Eton and said, go in there, right? If it was like that, everybody would be in Eton, right? And, I didn't even like the school that much. Please, oh gosh. Eton guys are not watching this. The Rexers are watching this.
Okay.
But, I love the Janiki. I love Federal Government College Lagos. And I owe everything I am today to that school, right? Because it taught me so much and it gave me an opportunity to be myself. And you can't for 1 second say everybody there was Nepo.
Not at
right?
all.
No,
I went to a federal school.
Yeah, exactly. So you know how it is. Exactly. So people come from all over the country, right?
And I came there as an orphan with a scholarship.
Okay, great.
But just the guy above me, his dad was a big ass politician in Nigeria, in Port Harcourt.
Okay.
And so we bonded, and half the time I'm like, I go around hungry and he's got everything. But we still go through this, we still go through the same experiences.
Yes, absolutely. So same as me. Anybody who didn't go to a federal government college, right, has missed out, in all honesty, right? So in my dormitory, at the time I went to secondary school, Shehu Shagari was the president.
Yeah.
3 of his children were in my 2 in my class, 3 in my school. The vice president had a child in school. All the government officials, right? Some of the biggest companies in the world. I think UAC was the biggest company in Nigeria at the time, right? The UAC guys were my classmates. And then at the other end of the scale, there were people that came from literally nowhere, right? You ate in the same dining table. You played the same football matches. You went to the same classes. There was no favoritism. You only knew these things because on visiting day, cars line up, right?
True.
And, I whether it was half term or full term breaks, we lived in London. So I traveled back home, right? So I used to come and bring things and we sat down and we shared those things, right? And the rich, the poor, the good, the bad, and the ugly, we all sat around the same table. It was just an exercise in who you are. And that's why I say, so eating was at the other end of the scale. But I know we got into this because of Nepo and Lapo.
Yeah.
Right? No. But look, my parents were diplomats. So my mother was a BBC correspondent. And my father was a diplomat. And they're both alive today, and I'm happy they are. But it's not every diplomat that when we look at the world today, and you see a lot of people are rich and are noisy and stuff, and you think that back then that's how they were. No, they were not. And there are few today that are like they were back then. The only problem is, as we said at the beginning of the talk, is the loudest make the most noise, right?
Sure.
And then people take that as the norm, but they're not. It really isn't the norm. We grew up with hard knocks. It was tough. We had no excesses in our house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now that you can afford to have Nepo babies, how do you maintain that sense of groundness? How do you keep them on a straight line?
So the one thing I learned from my parents is everything you make in life you work for.
Okay.
And that's the one thing I focused on for my children. Look, I have 2 children, so it was fairly easy, right? And I said, no, anything you want, you work. When my children went to university, they borrowed money. I made sure they took out loans, they paid their own school fees, and they're paying back those loans today, right? As simple as that. I made them work. When my children came up to me for presents, if they wanted PlayStation, I said, well, how much have you got, right? So the PlayStation is whatever, £200. They just knew at one stage just have 20%, right? Then 50%. By the time they got older, have 70% of the money. I was the completer of the money, not the originator. So I think my children grew up to understand that you have to work for what is yours, and what I have is mine, and what you have is yours, and I think that's important. But they're Nepo babies because you give them a better chance in life than you had, right?
Sure.
They choose what school they go to. You pay you pay those fees. They choose what they want to do. They're eating 3 square meals a day. They don't have to worry about certain things.
All the basics.
No, all the basics. I mean, when I was in university, I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. It never happened to them, right? From one term to one term, you're staying in different places. You're staying in this person's boys' quarters today. You'll be in the school hostel tomorrow. It was very different then. So they had comfort. They didn't have to worry about security issues. And I don't mean security as in danger.
I mean security, like social security.
Social security issues, bread and butter issues. They had no concern. So that's why I think they're Nepo babies, and they're lucky. And you hope that they do more for their kids.
Yeah,
than what's done for them.
Of course, well done, well done. And this, you sold all the other businesses. And then you went into Nigeria, of course, because the people are here, the numbers make sense.
And I knew this place, right?
And then
I grew up here. Yeah.
You knew the place.
Yeah.
How did you get the confidence of the people who gave you money to do the business here? the investors?
No, good question. We're still at it, by the way, right? You're still talking to investors every day.
Yeah, because you also have the one in Enugu that you've done 50%.
Yeah. And we just raised a private placement, had 20 odd really important investors that put big money into this thing, despite the recent challenges we've had.
Yeah.
So, I think, going back to my lecture in business school, make sure you have a good idea. Make sure you have the passion and the commitment to do it. Make sure the people you work with are right. Make sure that you're honest, you're transparent. Two of my favorite words recently, have been transparency and authenticity. So be authentic and be transparent. Be consistent and have passion. Make sure you hire the right people, right?
Yeah.
If you have bad people, you're not going to achieve anything, no matter how good your ideas are.
Yep.
Right? So try and hire the right people with the right mindset. Not necessarily the people who know how to do things, but the people who have the mindset to progress, right? And that's what really moves companies from A to B. Because you can teach people anything, but you can't teach people manners. You can't teach them emotion. You can't
teach them agency.
No, you can't. No. So there's some things that have to have when they come, right? And then the rest you can sort of expose them to and teach them and immerse them in. And if you do that, and that comes across when you speak to people, when you want their money, friends, family, angels, it comes across, and people have choices. And the truth is, most either investors or rich people have more money today than they can spend today.
True.
Right? And a lot of people invest today because they're worried about tomorrow, right? They want to create wealth for tomorrow, right? So you're in a competition with so many other people. You're also in a competition with luxury items, right?
Sure.
Because the guy thinks, I can buy a Rolls Royce and invest in your company. How do I make the difference? So you say, well, why don't you buy 2 Rolls Royces tomorrow, invest in me today, right? But they look at you, they look at your passion, they look at what you've done, they look how different it is, they look whether you do it in an excellent way. And remember the things I spoke about, excellence, adaptability, resilience.
Yeah.
They're not buzzwords, they're big things.
Yeah, they are.
And I think once you convey that, and we've raised money from different people from Europe, America, Africa, Nigeria, banks, investment banks, commercial banks, merchant banks. The first money I got was from a commercial bank in London. And, I walk into the room of the bank manager. I had no collateral or anything. But, over there, they don't necessarily ask for collateral. They're looking to sort of back people. There's all sorts of government schemes that back those things. But it was very competitive. And that's how I started Landmark in 1997. And I needed this £50,000 loan. And, it's a small amount of money. But it was a kicker loan that was going to give you up to 500,000, and you had to have a business idea. So I thought I had no chance, but I might as well try, right? And so I told my story, and I think there was just enough passion in that story. I had no experience and stuff. And then this guy called Richard Wainwright, I remember his name to today, no matter how long ago.
Because
that was the big break I had, because it just told me that someone I don't know trusts me, right? Usually, the only people who trust you are the people you know and who have seen you before you've seen them. But when you meet someone who has never heard of you, has never seen you, doesn't know what you're going to talk about, and you have, 5 to 10 minutes to convey who you are, make sure you're different from all the other 100 people you've seen. So this guy, for me, was everything. So we got that money, and my former boss gave me some money, and that's how we rolled the dice. And that was a long time ago.
and how is that different from how's that different from now when you have more numbers on the scoreboard?
Yeah, so exactly, it's very different because first of all, you know a lot more about yourself than you did then, right?
Sure.
So then you're talking about the future and how you think you react. Now you know who you are, right? Now you know your market. Now you know the possibilities, the potential challenges and opportunities. The only thing I always say is, do put all your eggs in one basket, watch that basket carefully. Just make sure you focus. Too many people are jack of all trades.
Okay.
Too many people say, there's money in oil, then boom, there's oil, then there's property. Most property developers actually have second jobs, right? They're not. This is one country, right? Where it's a vacation.
True.
It's a vocation, right? It's a pastime. It's actually not. So when that's your business, you're competing with people who it's not their business, right? It's very difficult, right? Because you're dealing with standards and things. But how does it differ? It just differs that you still have to tell that story. You have to make sure that every time you do something, you do it in the way that you're proud of. So, I'm a stickler for detail, and I'm a stickler for doing things the right way, no matter how painful, because I just think you stand to fight another day if you do things the right way. It's not always all going to go the way I told you of my tools, but I didn't tell you of my fallacies. Right?
What's the? Yeah, I want to know about that.
So the two fallacies, and these are the things when you grow up, you're told, right?
Yeah.
So the first fallacy is what I call the just word fallacy. Our parents, you grow up and your parents, your teachers, your friends tell you, right, that the world is just. Good is rewarded and evil is punished. Just be good, be good, be good. No, it's not.
It's only movies.
Oh, yeah, it's only movies, right? Good is hardly ever rewarded and evil is hardly ever punished, right?
Evil, on the contrary, evil gets rewarded.
Evil gets rewarded, yeah. Right? But does that mean you should be evil, right? Of course not. Absolutely. So you have to roll the punches and you've got to wait your time and you've got to say to yourself, my time will come, right? Good is not always rewarded. So don't cry and say, look, I did all this good and I haven't been rewarded. I'm now going to go the other way, right? And if you think you're doing evil and you're being rewarded, to catch up with you one day. And I am yet to find, know, or understand or see anything that has been doing bad and is sustained for life. And I've lived 60 years on this planet, and I've never seen anything.
You don't look it.
I can feel it.
Well, but you look 45, 40-ish.
40-ish.
Yeah, ish.
Yeah. My children will disagree with you.
Because they've seen in all your faces. But from here, if I meet you along the way and someone says, eyeball that guy and give me an age, I'll be like, not a day over 45, not a day over. It can be under, but not over. I
have a 45-year-old's brain, but certainly 60-year-old's bones. Right.
Okay.
But yeah, so in that time, I've had so many experiences. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And one thing that as night follows day, right, is that evil eventually fails. Yeah, and the good eventually does get rewarded. Mm-hmm. But it may not get rewarded at the time you choose.
Yeah.
Right. It just gets rewarded. Things of just sustaining it matters. Right. So that's the first fallacy. The second fallacy is the balance fallacy. You grow up and they say, look, have balance in life, right? Eat 8, sleep for 8 hours, work for 8 hours, socialize for 8 hours, or whatever ratios, right? Just have some balance. What do they say? Something about Jack being a dull boy. All work and no play.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah, and that was a rhyme we grew up in nursery school. Yeah. So, play, work and stuff. It's a fallacy. I say to people that if you prioritize balance over sacrifice, you won't be in the top 1%. It's as simple as that, right? So you got to just choose. If you want balance, that's okay, right? But you're not going to be in the top 1%. If you want to be in the top 1% of anything, you need sacrifice. And that's why there are people who get to the top and you don't know what they've been through. You think they got lucky, right? So whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's media, whether it's business, whether it's education, the people at the top have sacrificed. And nobody has any idea as to how much they've sacrificed, right? And that's where this whole Nepo and Lapo thing came from. Honestly, for this Nepo to even be a word, there's somebody at the tree. Someone had done the sacrifice. Someone has done that sacrifice. And the issue is, are the others going to sacrifice? And that's why sometimes dynasties don't last.
True.
And when dynasties do last, it's because there's been sacrifice. Yeah. This sacrifice has moved from generation to generation to generation.
Yeah, there's a family tree of sacrifice.
But people don't realize. People just think, well, you know what, it's balance. But before I would. Well, you know what, then it's okay. Live a life of mediocrity.
But what has been your greatest sacrifice doing this?
Well,
I know you've sacrificed a ton, but what's the one thing you say, okay, this is the mega sacrifice I put into this?
That's a very hard one. I can say 4 or 5 things, but that's a very hard one.
That's why I distilled it into one.
Yeah. It's very hard because I have to think of the journey. And that journey started from secondary school. And I think, what did I sacrifice? Then I have to sort of count, I came to Nigeria. I sacrificed who I was to try to.
Was it comfort? Was it comfort?
At that stage, it was.
No, at every point in time, what was that? What's the sacrifice you've had to always drop down?
Yeah.
Or is it denial of self?
Yeah. That's deep, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the words, but that relates most to comfort. I suppose you're sacrificing the ordinary for the extraordinary. I think a lot of people want to just continue life in the ordinary. You want to be predictable. You want to get in order a meal, it's a meal you wanted. You want to sleep when it's time to sleep. You want to meet your friend. You just want life to be normal, right? And that's what I call ordinary, right? I've sacrificed that. I'm hungry most times because I don't have time to eat. I'm tired most times because I don't have time to sleep, right? I have missed out on so many, and I won't call them opportunities, so many memories. I have only 2 kids. I missed the birth of
but still opportunity cost.
Yes, opportunity cost, right? And it's okay. It's okay because, it depends on what you're gunning for, right? And those things, even though they can't be replicated and replaced, just missing my children's first walk or the first dance in school or the prom or my son's graduation, missed a lot of things, right? But on the other side, you've got to ask yourself, what have you achieved? And, the life, hopes and aspirations of thousands of people rest on you too.
True.
Right? And, there's nothing more satisfying or gratifying than looking into the eyes of someone you didn't know 2 years ago, and they are happy because of the things that you have done, right? And that means a lot, because your children are always going to be happy at some point, or sad if you don't give them what they want, right? But the helping people you don't know is a lot more relevant than helping people you do know.
True.
And that, for me, is sacrifice. So most of the things I think I've sacrificed is I've sacrificed friends, family, and normality for the abnormal.
But all of this must come with a certain level of weight.
Yeah, expectation.
How do you feel it, right?
Yeah, of course.
Daily, even now.
Every day, every second. You got to live with it.
What's the specific nature of the weights you feel, knowing that you carry so much?
Expectation. It's huge, and everybody who comes to you, you're expected to influence their lives in one way or the other, feels you're the only thing that matters, right? And it's important to keep that, right? So they are the only thing that matters because it's important to them, so it has to be important to you. But you've got 100 things like that to balance. Today the government's calling and asking you to do X, Y, Z, and expects you to jump, right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, your driver is asking you, his house his roof is leaking and he wants you to pay some attention to it. So, the next day, someone, you've got so many, and everybody has those things in life. Some people, some things, depends on how you categorize them, are more important than others, right? But everybody has that. And the important thing is make sure you give people time, no matter whether the governor or the driver.
Yeah.
Just give them their time. Not one is not more important than the other because you came into this world the same, right? And we're living the same, right? So, and that's very hard, by the way, and that's one of the things, if there's one criticism of Africa I have, is that people treat people differently if they feel they're in positions of high places.
You could draw a graph between social graces and consideration and what is income brackets.
Yes. And it's a pity because it means money counts. And when you think money counts, is that people do anything for money. And that's why we're in a situation where we're in. People think it's important, right? But the wealthiest people in other parts of the world don't actually have money.
Yeah.
Someone's commented that the Queen doesn't have a penny. She probably hasn't touched money, right?
Yeah,
but she has everything money can buy, right?
True.
Right? So money actually counts too much in Africa. People place too high a premium, and when you think of what you do with that money, it's not worth the hassle you took to make it.
Yeah.
I count, and I'm sure you're the same. 80% of the things you've ever bought, you'd never have missed if you didn't buy them.
True.
Right? So
I agree.
All that time you spend making the money to buy those 80% of the things, you can put that time to better use, right? Or to some other use, right? That's one thing. And, at the other end of the scale, and that may be neither you nor me, but there are people out there that buy things they can't afford to impress people they don't know with money they never had, right? And it's a sliding slope.
True.
Right? Because you say, I need to have this latest iPhone or this watch or this bag or this car. You can't afford it. You don't necessarily like it. I can't tell the difference between a Timex and a Rolex, right? They both tell the time.
True.
But you're trying to impress people that you don't even know, people on the streets, because you can't really impress real friends. You can't impress your family, right?
True.
Right? You can't impress even your closest colleagues at work. You can't impress them. You can only impress people you don't know, right? So, a lot of people, literally do things to impress people they don't know. And it's such a waste, right? And you see that more in countries like this than countries like that. And that's a balance one has to change, right? And one has to reduce the glamour of money, make people serve a bit more. So when you're a leader, or it's not meant to be popular.
Yeah.
Right. There's meant to be sacrifice.
True.
Right. And you're not meant to be able to open doors that other people can't.
True.
Right. You're meant to be opening doors for other people. And when we get to that stage, you'll see a better country evolve and emerge. Because we just have so much. We have strong people. We have brilliant people.
Yeah.
And we understand adversity.
And more than ever, we are a country that has a collective lust for life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. People want to live.
People want to live. People want to have a nice time. I was explaining the dynamics to people when I'm not a great fan of niche businesses that cater for the rich or cater for a certain community. I just think whatever you do in Nigeria, just do it for multiple people, and you will do well, because there are a lot of people in that band. And you're in a country where, because there's no sort of financial, social security system, mortgage system, senior lending system.
There's no credit system.
There's no credit. So people can't leverage, right? As much. So people spend what they have. So whilst they may not be able to buy a car or a house or anything sort of really big, but they're ready to party, right?
Yeah.
They're going to spend money on food, on drinks, because be happy today at least. Who knows tomorrow? Everybody knows someone who was once on the streets and is now president, right?
Yeah.
So everybody pursues that dream, and it's a great thing, because you just feel you can be anything,
Sure.
right? So that energy, we've got to find a way to bottle it up and explode it, right? Nobody's found out how to do that yet.
True. And it's just sad. So we've done an hour, but I have one more question. I promised that we're going to keep you for an hour. So we have, and I'm enjoying this conversation so much that I want to break the rule, but you have to be somewhere else. So I'll just one more question. You're 60, and that's 60 years. In 1993. What happened to you in 1993? That's when you founded. Something very specific happened to you in 1993.
That's when I got married.
That's when you got married, exactly. I was 2 years old then.
So you're going to be my page boy.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm wondering, so my original industry is music. And in music, especially in pop music, everything has like a very fast cycle. So the biggest pop stars, normalcy is 5 years at the top, and then they fall off. Not fall off per se, but they have this, a lot of them have this graceful slide back to, obscurity.
Yeah, normality.
Normality. Not obscurity, normality, because they'll always be known, but they'll be normal.
So what's like politicians?
True. And the same for a ton of people that do high agency work. Entrepreneurship is high agency work. You self-starter, all of that. At 60, how do you stay? Number one, how do you generate the energy to want to go on more rather than conserve the things you have? Because now you're the Nikkei Resort now. You have your fingers all over it. You have people's money in there. You are building a game. You're creating and building a game at 60. Also, apart from the curiosity to go on, the strength to do this, what is the most important thing when you are pivoting above everything else? When you're pivoting, we pivot a lot all the time. You have pivoted a lot all the time. Your entire story is a story of pivots. How is it? What is important when you pivot? And how do you maintain the energy and the curiosity to continue to go?
Really good questions. I did a TED talk on pivoting. I called it, I think, a series of 360 degrees.
Yeah.
And, in life you pivot, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, you pivot. If you know it in advance, then you plan it. Right? If you don't know it in advance, then you react to it. How do I maintain the zeal and the desire? And listen, so inbuilt, I'm competitive, right? And when you're competitive inbuilt, it means you want to succeed. Then you have to figure out what success actually means to you. So success to me means changing lives, right? And I'm not trying to say, look, I'm a philanthropist. I'm certainly not a philanthropist, right? But I like whatever I do to impact many people, right? And I want to see people happy as a result of the things I've done. And when I think of sort of the happiest times I've had and the most successful things I've noted are when I've created platforms that made people happy. right? And that's what it's all about. So at this age, I'm doing what I do because I know that's what brings me joy, right? So I'm prepared to continue to do it.
And that's important. That's that generation of visceral joy.
Yes, it's important because that's what keeps you happy, keeps you alive, keeps you motivated, and it's nice when it puts someone in your pocket too, right? But it's very important. It's also important to carry people on that journey because you want to see people's lives change, right? And what they call the 4 S's, the stages of survival. So you go through it, what's the first one? Survival, when you have bread and butter issues, then security, when you have at least a roof over your head, food in the fridge, and then success, when you can buy a nice watch and a car and a house that nobody else has. The next stage is significance. And significance is not about you anymore. It's about other people. Right? It's leadership, it's entrepreneurship, it's philanthropy, it's like trying to create a legacy long after you've left the planet, right? And you've got to figure out what it is you want to do. I mean, what keeps an Olympic athlete who has won 4 gold medals back to back going for the 5th, right? The amount of sacrifice that person has to do to keep that thing going. People don't see it. You only see that 100-meter race, that 10-second race, right? You don't realize there's 364 days of
running that race.
Of sweat, right? Yeah. So that's the thing. The second thing I think that keeps me is adversity, right? If you face the number of challenges I faced, you say to yourself, this is not for you. This is for other people. You want to be the poster boy for overcoming adversity. And when you do overcome adversity, what it does do, it gives people a chance, it gives people hope. It just tells a big story to other people, is that you can continue, just stay truthful to your principles. So those things mean a lot. And, I want to see my children say, you know what, no matter what I face in life, you can overcome it, right? And that's important to me. I don't know how much you know about the challenges we've faced, but we've faced some huge challenges. Not just they probably played that one last year, right?
Yeah, I know.
We've faced some.
It's overplayed. That's why I'm not talking about it. I'm more about the learnings and the whys.
Yeah. So that's important. So that's where I look at what sort of keeps me going. And the second part to your
pivoting,
it was pivoting. So what was the thing I said at the very beginning? I said, if there are 3 things you need here, I said resilience and excellence. The one in the middle,
adaptability.
And that's about pivoting, right? Is you can't change the cards you're dealt. You can only change the hand you play. Right? And that is all about adapting, and that's all about pivoting. You have to recognize the market, read it, and plan in advance. What they say, find out where the people are going and get there first. And, I think it's such an important concept to not get stuck where you are because you have chosen to be somewhere, right? I've forgotten who said this. If you can't change your mind, you can't change anything.
True.
Right? Change is the one thing that is constant. So, and pivoting is all about change. And I would say to all your listeners here, don't be afraid to change, right? Embrace it. The world is changing, will continue to change. Embrace it, be ahead of the game. Think of what you will do when change is required, even before change comes.
Sure.
And then you feel comfortable with change. I am incredibly comfortable with change. I can fly in a private jet today. I can go in the Millway bus tomorrow. And I change as long as it gets me from A to B, right? And don't get me wrong, I like the good things, but I can live with the other things too, right? You're not going to be a slave to luxury, and you're not going to be a slave to anything else, right? So, and pivoting in business is just a bigger expression of the things that happen to you on the day-to-day. It's like being in traffic.
True.
And you're going somewhere. You've got to decide, are you going to stop and turn back, or are you going to make sure you get there? If you're going to make sure you get there and this road is blocked, you're going to have to pivot, right, to get there. So it's all about resilience and adaptability and excellence.
Thank you so much. Thank you. On a personal level, I've learned so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joey. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, it has.
Thanks a lot.
It has.
I've talked about things I didn't even think about.
Exactly. That's the point. That's why I have no questions. I just walk with you. So thank you. I've learned so much. And, all right, let's wrap this up. Thank you.
So my name is Paul Onwuanibe. I'm the founder and CEO of the Landmark Africa Group. If I were to say I had one major philosophy, I would say I'm quoting the next US president, and it says, basically, if you want something you've never had, you've got to be prepared to do something you've never done. And I top that up because it's all about time and it's all about specificity. So the opportunity of that lifetime can only be realized in the lifetime of the opportunity. So if you want something, want it now and do it now. And that effectively governs my life.